So first of all, thanks for everybody, staying around for a long evening. I actually start with, our trade from 74, trade down from 74. Once we got to 74, we actually had a number of players that, we really liked. And when the opportunity with New Orleans came up, we felt like it was an opportunity for us where we could move back really a small amount in the third round and still pick from a number of players that we thought were really good fits for the roster. Specifically to Jordan Elliott, for us, we see Jordan that as a player that has the right physical skill set to be a three technique in our defense. A guy with quickness, gap penetrating ability, and who was very disruptive at Missouri. Really good fit in our scheme. Like the guy's talent, like the guy's upside for our defense. In terms of Jacob, Jacob really has the physical characteristics of what we would consider our modern day linebackers. He has length, athleticism, and speed. A really rangy guy who's also good in pass coverage. So we love his ability to play in space. We love his ability to run. We think he's going to be a really good fit within our group. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Excellent. Thanks, AB. Jeff, we'll start with you with the first question. And Jeff, still having some issues with those audio. We'll get that worked out and come back to you. We'll start with Scott Petrick.
Hey, Andrew. I had a question about both the trades you made. You talked about the one from 74. Were you looking to add picks in 2021, or did that opportunity just come? And then the first one you made from 41, did you you could get the guy you were looking for at 44?
Yeah, so I'll start with the trade from 41 first. That's one where we felt pretty good that we were going to have the guy that we wanted by just moving back 3 spots. So it was an opportunity for us to really pick up an extra pick at pretty much minimal cost. The one in terms of adding picks into the future, we'll always go into a draft if we can get a day 2 pick in a following year. But right, there is the trade-off relative to what are you sacrificing at the time that you would make the pick. In this particular instance, we felt like we did have a number of guys that we would like to have on the roster, so we didn't feel like we were necessarily trading away from talent, so to speak. So we felt good about the guys we added.
And we'll go to Mary Kay next.
Hey, Andrew, what's up with the SEC?
I could assure you, Mary Kay, that we did not plan it. But these are all really good football players in arguably the best, that best conference in college football. So it's certainly a good place to start for us, but it just happened to work out that way.
All right, thanks.
All right, Jeff, you ready?
I'm ready.
Fire
Can you
away.
hear it? Oh, good. When you look at that run defense of yours last year, Andrew, 5 yards a carry, it seems like that's a theme of this draft for you. Is that true?
I don't know that I would say, Jeff, the run defense in particular isn't necessarily a focus. We're looking to add players that we think fit our defense, fit our scheme, and then fit our culture, and then can improve the competition and talent across the roster. And then the particular dimensions of run defense or pass defense, that'll really come with it. So it's not necessarily with an eye to stop the run, but we do have guys that we think will help us in that regard.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Dan, you're up.
Yeah, Andrew, we kind of know the types of players you can get in the first round of the draft, but on day 2, I mean, what are you really looking to add to your roster when you can add, 2 or 3 guys that maybe weren't first rounders, but are really good players?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Dan. Once we get into the later stages of the draft, whether it's early day 3 or late day 2, you generally are seeing players who may have a little bit more to go in terms of the developmental curve, but you are looking for players that have the physical characteristics where they can be significant contributors or eventual starters within the context of your scheme. I think both the players that we took tonight, or excuse me, on the later day of day 2, fit that mold. I mentioned earlier with Elliott, he has the physical characteristics we're looking at for a 3 technique in our defense, and Jacob, with his speed and length and range, really fits what we're looking for as in our will linebacker spot. So we're excited about those guys. We're excited about adding some competition and getting our coaching staff working with them.
Thanks. We'll go to Marla next.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a quick question about Jordan Elliott. It sounds like he's kind of coming into his own, just kind of a late bloomer or something. He talked about his maturity, and do you see that, how he's grown maybe in his last couple of years at Missouri?
Yeah, and that's something that just talking to individuals around the program, they talked about, and I think even as you've probably learned with Jordan, Jordan has an incredible level of self-awareness, and that was one of the things that really resonated with us and stuck with us, particularly when we met with him, at the combine, and then again when we had what we would call our virtual top 30, is really just his eye towards self-improvement, his ability to reflect, and just the strides that he's made even in college. So we do think that he's a player that's on the come, and we're excited to work with him to see if we can see if we can get him to his potential.
He said he had a feeling that you guys hit it off in the combine interview. Did you feel that too?
Yeah, no, we did, and it's funny. So I got several texts over the course of the spring, specifically from Jordan's agents, like, hey man, this guy, he really wants to be in Cleveland. He really wants to be a Brown, and that's always sort of neat, because you could tell with him it was coming from a very authentic place, and very rarely do those situations just like work out that way. That wasn't something that we were necessarily aiming to do as we entered the draft. But when the opportunity came to pick him at what we thought was the appropriate point, it ends up being a really cool story. So we're happy to have him as a part of our team.
Thanks.
Daryl Ryder, you're up.
Andrew, just a happy coincidence. You drafted 2 defenders who got to watch Joe Burrow in practice every day.
A very happy coincidence, Daryl. So hopefully that gives us a little bit of an advantage here moving forward.
And then I wanted to ask you about your linebacker situation as you're trying to kind of put it together. Is that really what you're trying to do, is figure that group out? It seems you're more definitive with some other spots, but linebacker really seems to be in flux with you guys. How would you assess where you're at there?
I would push back and say that we're really trying to figure out all of our groups. We haven't hit the field yet. Guys haven't earned jobs. They haven't earned playing time. We think that we have a talented core. We've brought in other talented players, but guys will really have to earn their stripes. In terms of the linebacker room specifically, right? It's a very young group, right? You have 2 players who are entering their second year, another that we're adding who's a rookie. But that's exciting because it's a room of opportunity. Obviously, we lost Joe this offseason, who was the elder statesman, very experienced. Same thing with Christian. So it gives younger players an opportunity to step up, and establish their own roles within the system. So we're excited to see that and see how that plays out over the course of the spring and summer. Hopefully the spring and then the summer. Yeah.
Appreciate it, Daryl. Tony Grossi.
Hey, Andrew. I don't know whose eyes are heavier, mine or Commissioner Goodell's at this point of the evening.
You should throw me in the mix there too, Tony.
I want to ask you, now that it's official that Joe Burrow is in your division, and Lamar Jackson's in your division, you and Paul have both talked about long-term in the draft. How are those 2 players affecting your draft plans, if at all?
Yeah, we don't really look at it that way. We know that we have 2 young talented passers that are now in the division, but we're really going to operate more from the standpoint of like how can we build the best offense, how can we build the best defense, and use our resources, whether they're picks or their dollars, appropriately, rather than for a specific player on another team. Because even though those guys are going to be in the division for a very long time, that's also, 4 of what will potentially soon be 17 games, right? So we're not going to just, build our team or build our defense just with those 2 players in mind, but we understand the challenges that we face moving forward with 2 very talented young quarterbacks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Tony. We'll go to Nate Ulrich next.
Hey, Andrew. I just want to ask you about the idea of continuing to add to that defensive tackle group. Sheldon Richardson, Ogunjobi, and then you sign Billings, and then you draft a guy in the 3rd round. Can you talk about the philosophy doing that? And then linebacker position, you called, position of opportunity because you guys are young. Is BJ Goodson the only veteran presence you think you need, or do you think you need somebody else? Or are you ready to roll with these young guys?
So to answer your first question in terms of the defensive line, I think if you look at what San Francisco did last year, and really even what Steve did last year here, the defensive line, they're almost like hockey lines, right? We're really past the days where you just play your starters, and that's those are the only 4 guys that play. And so for us, it is important to have depth within that position group where you can wave guys in and out of the game. And so if you look at some of the things that we've done over the course of the offseason, it really is to bolster the talent and depth, particularly with that second group. So, adding Jordan, adding Andrew, adding Adrian, early in the spring, we think gives us a good opportunity to do that. In terms of linebacker room, Nate, I think that, look, there was a day when, when Joe Schobert was an unknown, right? Where he was a 2nd-year player, transitioning to being an off-the-ball linebacker for the very first time and calling the defense for the very first time. So I do think it's important, like as we look at all the position groups and all of our position groups evolve over the course of the years on the roster, that we do give young players an opportunity to, produce and succeed. They do, and the only way they get a chance to do that is by playing. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to we're not going to play for another 5 months. So it doesn't mean that we're not going to look for opportunities to continue to upgrade the roster at all spots. But we do have a lot of faith and want to make common practice the ability to give young players a chance to perform.
Thanks, Nate. Tony mentioned us getting a little fatigued all around, so we'll close out with the 2 in the queue. We'll go to Terry Pluto, and then we'll close with Scott Petrick. Terry, you're up.
Andrew, is there something in terms of character traits or, character traits, their personalities or things that they showed when they were in college that attracted you to these guys?
Yeah, I mean, for really all the guys that we take, we really do, look for players who are tough, smart, and accountable. And that doesn't mean that, like all of us, every guy's perfect, but guys who love the game, they have physical and mental toughness, they have high football acumen, and they're accountable for what they do both in the building and off the field. And we do feel like that we've brought in a group of guys who embody those characteristics.
Were you looking at any of the linebackers that, I forgot what number you traded down to get Elliott, wherever you were there, like the kid from Wisconsin or any of those guys there?
We without going to specific players there, we did have a couple of players across positions that we liked, and Jordan and Jacob were among them.
And then finally, too, on the character and because they always talk about you want to get them in the building, you want to talk to them, spend all day with them. Obviously, you couldn't do that. So how were you able, in your mind, to be pretty clear on what kind of people these were and that? Because I know sometimes you go to the school, but shoot, the school a lot of times, I mean, it's not in their best interest to tell you a whole lot of bad things about their own players. So,
well, I guess that's where I would push back a little bit, Terry, just because our area scouts do a great job of building a network of contacts and relationships within their regions. And part of that is so that we can get honest feedback. And it's less about, sometimes I think there's this belief that when area scouts go out, they go to a school and they're trying to find what's wrong with a guy. A lot of times, like, we want to go when the focus is like, okay, help us understand the individual. So if we select them or we bring them to Cleveland, we can create an environment where they can be as successful as possible. And that's really our approach, as opposed to go in to find, flaws or what's wrong with a kid or an individual. Because again, we're all imperfect beings, and all of us will have made mistakes. But as long as they have those core characteristics, we feel comfortable bringing them into the building.
And just one last thing with
We
these
got
LSU
to wrap,
guys.
Terry. We got to wrap, Terry.
I'm sorry.
All right, thanks, Terry. We're gonna go to Scott, and then we'll close it out.
Andrew, we talked to you before we talked to Grant. He had a lot of swagger, said you guys would have the best secondary in the league. And I was just wondering, did you know that about him? And are you good with that he comes in talking kind of smack right away?
I guess the way I would answer that, Scott, is certainly love confidence, love performance the most, right? Every guy has to earn their playing time, improve it on the field. We think that Grant is very talented, and it's good that he has confidence, because if you're playing in the secondary in the NFL, you really do need confidence. It's a tough job, but Grant, no different than every other player on our roster, has to earn his playing time, earn his stripes, and we'll see where it goes from there.